My name is Eric Belardo. I am the executive director and founder of Raíces Cyber, which is his association to bring in more Hispanic, Latinos, Latinx into the field of cyber and also support them with our allyship and everything like that. I've been in cybersecurity for 32 years this year, working 20 plus years in the government side of the house and the rest in commercial side of the house. Former U.S. Army veteran.
Cool.
Okay, Intel. Let's go. And I am here to bring we're here to bring a discussion on the public-private partnerships with our government and civilian private industry. So with me is a distinguished panel here. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Keenan. Keenan.
Hi,
Hi, Keenan.
Okay.
Hi, Keenan.
All right.
So I have a very diverse background, much like Eric here. I started life out as a bomb disposal technician in the United States Army.
Cool.
Super fun. You get to blow shit up and hang out with the president, and they're okay with it. Like, they're just okay with it. Also, after that, I went to DHS, where I ran the comprehensive review program when MPPD was first standing up, what eventually became CISA. So lots of opinions and thoughts, and you're going to hear all of them on this panel regarding that. And currently, I'm the CEO of a company that does threat intelligence, Shadowbite, and then also my consulting company, Spark. It's going to be loud in here, so I hope you guys are ready.
All right.
For the people in the back. Oh, my. Is it on? Hello back there. Welcome. My name is Tasha Denos. I sit on the... Hi, Tasha.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about, guys.
He gets it.
He totally gets it.
I know.
That's the kind of, we're open discussion here. We want to feel like we're together, we're friends.
If you make them all move to the front.
Yeah, that is a good thing. If you're in the back, come to the front. If you're in the back, come to the front. If you're in the back and you want to get...
Look, all right, there you go.
There we go. Well, I got two. That
was
counts.
two. Okay.
That counts. Yeah. Oh, we got three. We're not giving anything away. Just, you can get closer and you can feel us breathing on you. I have been in cybersecurity close to 15 years. As everyone, it's always an interesting way that you get into this field. I thought I was going to be a fashion designer and working in Neiman Marcus windows. I am actually been working in the public and private sector. I spent a lot of my 15 years at the Pentagon working in governance and risk when it was called information assurance. Now my most important job is getting Black girls into cybersecurity. So I'm not the only Black girl in this room. So yeah. So I'm going to pass it on to this good gentleman here. You'll hear me speak a lot more later.
Hello, everyone. My name is Monty Mcgee.
Hi, Monty.
So I guess in comparison, maybe I'm the newbie because I only have 8 years in cyber. So you can ignore everything I say and just listen to my experienced folks.
How did he make it in this panel? No, okay.
No, in all seriousness, though, my career started out as a U.S. diplomat, foreign service, and worked a bit in consulting, defense consulting, and now I support small and medium-sized business cybersecurity. And so this panel is really exciting for me because I hope to bring the perspective from small and medium-sized businesses as well.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. And I'm so glad that you guys made it here today and that we're here all together, both the people on the virtual and the people here in the room. So let's start out with to each one of you, what is your definition of what a public-private partnership should be?
I'm going to go last on this because I'm gonna get ugly quickly.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to get ugly. I want to stay pretty. And I mean, I don't think it should be that complicated. We have interconnections with DHS, DOD. All of us are on the public side, talk to each other. There's a lot of connections on the private side talking to each other. It really doesn't make sense that they're not connected. There's simple things like panel discussions like these. We should be having open forums quarterly basis. It's not a hard thing. Pick CISOs from top companies to speak with, SESs from the highest levels of cyber governance to have open discussions about why we don't talk to each other and what are the easiest, quickest goalposts to get to start mergers and have good conversations.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, and for me, I think about kind of mutual trust being a key part of it. Also kind of a shared understanding of goals and objectives, because I think oftentimes when there is that kind of disjointed approach to where the partnership is supposed to go, oftentimes the expectations are different and kind of the outcomes are usually unsuccessful. So mutual trust, clear communication, and then a common understanding of shared goals, I think, are kind of the pillars that I would say form a good public-private partnership.
So I'm going to dive in head first. Dealing with a lot of DHS type public-private partnerships in my past, I've seen the comings and goings of a lot of different ideas about what that should mean, all the way from this partnership is going to include us as the government telling you exactly how this is going to work, and you don't really get input, but you get to be on the interagency working group, right? So that's great. All the way to kind of a midpoint where you get a little bit of feedback from the owners and operators, you get a little bit of feedback from the people who are being affected, but you don't necessarily put any of that into action. What I think of when I think of a public-private partnership is really something that's a clear pane of glass between the partner, between the government, so that you can actually reach out and touch anyone whenever you need to, whenever there's an incident, and know exactly who you're touching and know exactly what you're going to get from the government when that happens. When we talk about cybersecurity, especially, that becomes super, super important. So what I would like to see in that dynamic is that clear pane of glass where everybody clearly is participating and has objectives and goals that are met for both sides.
So what would be what would be your ideal public-private partnership in cyber? What is it? There's various areas, and again, that question's very, very broad as cyber, right? So we have intelligence sharing, we have security operations. We have different areas of security that we look at different public partnerships. What would be some of the ideas of what other partnerships could be established? And dream a little bit. Tell me what you think would be something new that we can do to make it better.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of start with the small business hat, because I think really when we talk about public-private partnerships, too often the conversation is really about government to large industry. And I think sometimes the voice that's lost in that is the small and medium-sized entrepreneur. Whether it's a security startup or an established business supplying an organization with inputs to their particular product or service. I think those are the ones that need the most help, which we've heard on other panels, but have the fewest resources to actually address issues. And so I think not often enough, small and medium-sized businesses they're not invited necessarily to the table because of concerns around, well, how do you reach everyone? There are over 300,000 small and medium-sized businesses in the U.S. alone. So how do you reach all of them? And so I think there are creative ways to go about doing this. We've talked, or on other panels, they've talked about, utilizing ISOs, ISACs as a means of kind of convening, groups together and then having kind of shared outcomes, shared goals that come out of those that then government can engage. So I do think we have to be more creative, but I think we really have to come back to this idea of multi-stakeholder and truly include all of the stakeholders that are a part of a successful, cyber resilience or cyber readiness type of approach.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback.
Nice. We told you we're joining in.
Yeah.
I would say it's starting with one of the priorities that's important to me that I see that sticks out, coming from a nonprofit, one of the biggest things that's an easy win is getting an understanding of how the pipeline is working for employment, right? We have things like the NICE framework that is not utilized across multiple layers and multiple organizations that can actually help the problem that we all have with millions of jobs being open and not having enough people to fill them. Those are the kind of things, if we find places that we both have issues that are not as contentious as maybe intel sharing, and start there and then move forward, I think that's maybe a way to open the door.
Yeah, I always say that we have a very big PR problem in the field of cybersecurity, because we say to the young folks that are coming in, we say, cybersecurity, I want to learn cybersecurity. It's like, wait a second, there's 50 different types of jobs in the field. It's the same thing as saying cybersecurity, I want to learn healthcare. It's not the same thing. So that's a great point. That introduces the concepts of what are the barriers to entry, or what are the challenges when setting up a private-public partnership, be it in education, be it in intelligence sharing, and I'm going to ask you about the intelligence sharing part with you, but for the education piece, and how do we bring more people in these public-private partnerships? We have a challenge that there's some benefits to being in a public-private partnership, and then we have other that are things that hamper us. So let's start with, what are the benefits of being in a program with our government counterparts, and what do you see as positive from that?
Benefit number one, relationships. I think everybody in this room has heard this so many times. You're like, yeah, no kidding, relationships, right? But one of the challenging things about working with government, any element of government, and especially DHS, no hate, I love you guys, but there's not a whole lot of people working in DHS who can reach out and have these conversations with all of the different people, whether it's small and medium business, whether it's nonprofits, whether it's for education, all of that. There simply aren't enough people to really get into that and do it the way that it needs to be done. As was mentioned this morning, the JCDC is a great idea when it comes to going forward and how we can interact with companies. However, my criticism to that is we've done that before. We've done the interagency working groups. We've done this. I really think that DHS needs to have more manpower, honestly, to really deal with a partnership issue like it's never had before. 1 people, 2 people, 4 people working on partnerships for absolutely, every piece of industry, every nuclear power plant, it's not going to cut it. It's just not going to happen.
I mean, all of it is a top-down thing. So if leadership doesn't care and leadership doesn't want a public-private partnership that works and is successful, then it's not going to come through. So when we were talking about what does that look like, what are the initiatives that we would set, it has to be something that is funneled down. So when those 1 or 2 people are connecting through that pane of glass, they have an understand that they're empowered to actually make change that matters. That's the kind of situations that we need to make it successful. I think there needs to be openness to the fact that no one has overpowered the other person. Yeah. There's no, it's a partnership.
It's not that 90-10, the government saying down.
The government is telling industry what to do, and normally that's what happens, and industry is not interested because they have money to make. It's more of trying to find a mutual place where they both respect each other and they can move forward.
Right, and I would foot stomp the mutual trust and kind of the shared understanding there. I think from the industry side, there definitely is a lot to gain. I mean, the public sector, the government has a great understanding of certain regions and certain threat actors, and bringing that to bear in terms of how an organization then defends itself I think is invaluable. Obviously, we're going to talk about some of the barriers to kind of making that happen. And on the other side, having worked in the government, I think it's pretty clear that a lot of the expertise actually, continues to reside in industry for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
And so, whether it be the human resources, the financial resources, or the technical capabilities that industry can offer to government, I think those are kind of benefits that are clear on both sides. When we get into the barriers, I think, that's where we have to really kind of put our minds together in this multi-stakeholder type of approach to figure out, like, what are the creative ways that we can kind of get around some of those traditional barriers? Right. What are those steps that we can take even now to kind of overcome some of those in a way that actually helps both sides meet that shared mission, collaborate in areas that we can.
And what I hear you saying is that these partnerships are not your traditional projects. They're not supposed to be traditional projects. And that always complicates. Somebody wants to be in charge, somebody wants to be a leadership, or somebody has the money invested in this. But the question that I pose to you guys now is it always, and I'm going to make it an absolute, is it always the role of the government to initiate these private-public partnerships, or should we change the modicum and do it differently? And how would you do that?
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Did I say something smart?
Absolutely. What he just said. And man, I have so many ideas on this. I think that we've gotten stuck in this place, especially when it comes to critical infrastructure and IT, OT kind of environments where these are mixed. We've gotten so much into this idea that because it's regulated and because it is, 15 different agencies looking in on me and checking in on me all of the time, I need to stay under a little bit of cover, right? I don't want the government coming to me. I don't want the feds coming to me and saying, what are you doing about this? And what are you doing about that? And I certainly don't want to offer up any information for fear that I'm going to fall outside of that regulatory checklist, right? So I think one of the biggest things that has to happen is more benefit and reassurance to the private sector about what it is that they're going to get out of it. So it can't just be, hey, come talk to us and we might give you, some low-level intelligence that's not really going to be helpful to you whatsoever. It has to be much more than that. There has to be a bottom line, almost derivative that they can see as a business owner and say, okay, this is why I need this. This is going to actually protect me from that ransomware. This is actually going to protect me, and I'm going to get all of these assets when something happens, right? That has to happen.
Yeah, and the point also that we need to look at too is sometimes the intelligence comes from those small businesses. They're the first ones to get hit, and that intelligence can flow up to the government entities, to the ICs and different things. So it behooves us to do that communication back and forth.
John Weiler here. I run a public-private partnership called the ITAC, IT Advisory Council. What I think we're also missing is representation of the international standards bodies and other nonprofits. We have all the high-tech companies, big guys, the feeds. Why are they not involved? They're the ones setting the standards for this.
Yep.
Yeah. And for the people at home watching us, the question was, why are not the international organizations joining these types of partnerships? And we see some of it in certain areas, other organizations. Yes, it's a very small, and I think one of the things that we need to do as groups and organizations is to say, how do we bring these organizations together to the table, as equals, to be able to work on that. But what prevents us from doing that?
Okay, well, I want to come back to the example too, because I have one as well. But no, I think the prevention, we touched on it in different ways. I mean, obviously classification is an enduring challenge that, we've been talking about for more than a decade, and unfortunately still haven't figured out a way to crack that nut. I also think that, on a fundamental level, we have to appreciate that kind of the mission objectives look very differently. And so when you talk about, a for-profit company, I'm not saying that national security is not a priority, but that may not be the leading priority when in competition with, demands from shareholders and others. On the government side, when we're talking about securing, national critical infrastructure, when we're talking about, ensuring the safety and security of the American people, right? If that's not profitable, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so I think at a very fundamental level, you have kind of disparate starting places. And so the question then becomes, well, if we're starting at different places with different kind of goals in mind, where are those areas of overlap that we can come together around?
I would slightly disagree because it benefits both. It benefits companies to protect data, so they have their profit, loss margin where they're looking for how do I protect data? What happens if there's a breach? How much I can spend if there's a breach? I feel like if they have the mutual trust, I feel like trust is gone. That's the biggest part of the trust factor of what you were saying, as far as like, if I provide you with data or I provide you with intel, am I going to deal with the repercussions that's going to come back to me about providing you this good intel? So I think what the gentleman brought up earlier, it's figuring out who are all the key partners that have a place in this are key. Both government and private use these regulations. We focus on NIST. We utilize NIST CSF on the private side. We're using 853 on the government side. We need to be figuring out, okay, if we can use the same regulations and documentations to govern our organization, we can also figure out how we're doing the same and protecting the data and building relationships.
I think I want to hit on that. So I think that along those lines, there has to be better education out to the private sector also, and owners and operators, in terms of what actually happens when they go through an incident, when they experience something, and how the government is going to come in, right? Are they going to just take over everything? That's what everybody's afraid of, right? They're going to show up in my SOC and they're going to take over and we're not going to know what's going on. Well, that's not reality. That's not actually how that works. And I think for a lot of businesses, especially the smaller ones who don't deal with the government very often, there's this perception of how this is going to go down and what it's going to impact in my business. I think that for all of the love that I have for DHS and for CISA, we're still not really good at really communicating that to the end users and the operators, and we need to get better at that.
And I was just going to maybe build on that point a bit, in that I think, it's also there are a lot of partnership type of arrangements. I think you brought it up earlier in terms of this is not necessarily new.
Interagency working group and the JCDC, right, and the.
So if you're in the DIB, you have all of these, type of partnerships through DOD. There are partnerships, with members of the IC. And so the question becomes, well, how then do I navigate this labyrinth of government desire to partner, right? And if I already have limited resources, if I already have maybe a need for more of that awareness and education, then I think something like a clear roadmap that helps an organization based on either their sector, their size, the type of data that they handle and store, to understand if you're experiencing an incident, this is the type of organization that you need to connect with. These are your.
But that's I'm gonna argue with you. We're gonna argue right now because I see some of you guys falling asleep and it's not okay. So that's exactly what the SSAs were supposed to do. That's exactly what the ISACs were supposed to do. And that's why I get a little critical when we say that the JCDC is now the new, going forward, this is how it's going to work and it's all going to be magical and lovely. It's not going to be magical and lovely. It's going to continue to be.
Yeah.
It's going to continue to be a challenge.
Well, I was going to go there next. So thank you very much for
already gone, so come.
jumping there. So here we go. So there was an attempt to bring in more people by building, a few years ago, we started building the intelligence sharing organizations. ASAOS.
A few years ago, dude, that was like 20 years ago. What are you talking about, man?
You see this? It passes slow. Okay, so we started building these, right? And now there's, and it's a great, some of the internal sharing organizations are very, very good, but there's a barrier to entry for the small business, medium-sized business. A lot of the organizations that are in these intelligence sharing are big industry, but to get information from a small business, a nonprofit, your mom and pop shop out there there's a lot of barriers to entry. How can we make that better? What are things that we can do to better share intelligence without it being, also I'll use the word gatekeeping, okay?
Declassification of open source information. This is, I'm going to get on my soapbox again. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry.
Yeah.
So it's great that we have information that's classified, and it's great that critical infrastructure has a lot of very specific information that we don't want other people to know about, right? That's important, national safety, blah, blah, blah. But when anybody, including threat actors, can go out to the dark web and find, the technical schematics and actually identify what PLC is operating in an individual plant, why are we not sharing it with each other, right? They're sharing it with each other. They're sharing it with ransomware gangs, but we're not. We have got to get past.
Once it's out there, it's
Yeah.
found, why don't we declassify?
We have to get past this classification issue, and that can no longer be the barrier to entry.
Yeah.
So are you thinking, I don't know if this is, I'm allowed to ask a question, but I want to. So when we're looking at this relationship, are we placing the barrier to entry and the barrier and the issues on the government? Do we believe that this is a government issue, or do we believe that this is a private sector issue? I think that's figuring out who's creating the barrier.
Yeah, definitely both.
I would say in my experience, it's been both, the information that's flowing into some of these organizations might need to be, declassified or classified in different ways. We're going to see TLP red pants later on, but
At least one pair.
At least one pair. Okay. And if you don't know what that means, stay tuned for about 6 o'clock today. Okay. But we have that barrier to entry from the information. From the bottom up is, how do we get these smaller organizations or mid-sized organizations to be part of? Forget the information that's there. How do we make them part of so that they can share that information? I always hear in a lot of these panels talking, well, CISO number one or director of security number one had this hack. Why aren't we sharing it across so that we can protect ourselves better without it going, hack number one goes up to the government where they look at and then choose where to share. So, I always said.
Then hacks 5 through 7 happen in the same
Correct.
industry.
So
and we're like,
how
well,
do
why?
how do we share that in a relationship where we have our partners in the government and partners in the industry, and that it doesn't exclude our small and mid-sized businesses? Monty.
Well, I actually want to come back to an example, a recent example that I think is really encouraging. And it's in February of this year, a group of about 22 nonprofits that focus on cyber-related issues came together to form Nonprofit Cyber, a coalition of nonprofits that are in the field to really do exactly what you're talking about, to identify areas where through shared resourcing you can get after some of these kind of sticky issues. And so it's still fairly new, but there's a lot of opportunity there. And these organizations share the Mike and Cyber's, cyber security network, there's the Cyber Threat Alliance. Different organizations have come together and they're bringing their expertise to this coalition to get after exactly what you say. But I do think, there's this implicit assumption as well that that a lot of these organizations are actually mature enough to participate.
Yeah, that's
and I think that may be a misconception, right? I work with a lot of small businesses that are still very much trying to get their arms around the fundamentals. Right? How do I, prevent kind of my workforce from clicking on every kind of link that they get,
So I'm going to ask you.
Listen, my friend called me this morning and she is doing her annual cyber awareness. And she said, is this your damn job? Is this what you do? This video that I'm watching, is this what you do all day? Because I don't understand and I don't want to watch this video. I was like, but you should watch this video. She was like, are people just clicking links out there? I don't get it. And they are. I'm like, just please finish watching the video. She was like, what the hell is schmishing? I like the word, but does it matter? And I think that adds to what you're saying. It's like, they don't have we're putting a lot of onus on people that don't even understand what the requirement is to share the information.
Yeah,
people still trying to drag and drop.
If you have a clearance to take 1,000 classes every year, keep your accuracy static noise, pretty much nothing.
And that video has not changed in 10 years. I know for a fact.
It's like boom, boom, boom. It's the same thing in every industry. Training has to be put in context. The average person who is in a firm that's interested in cybersecurity, I make the chair. I put the leather on the chair. Why am I going to sit and watch this video?
Yeah.
I go into my supply chain system.
Yeah.
Put it in context.
Contextualize
I don't wanna
training.
be a
Yeah.
teaching, a fishing,
There is
expert.
fishing. It's
I
fishing.
saw yesterday quishing.
Right.
I was-
No, I just want to do my job, and I don't want to get in trouble, but make it meaningful to me.
Yeah.
One size does not fit all. You can't. This is not the Costco or the Walmart of cyber or the
Yeah.
Target or the Amazon. Give it to me in a way that's contextual. This is my job. If I do this, bam. If I do that, here's a flower.
Right.
Yeah. And to bring that back here, we look at training, like you said, not just to the person themselves, but then to the organization itself. As Monty was saying, how do we get small and mid-sized businesses to have that basic level of hygiene by supporting them with private-public partnerships and saying, we're not here to take over, we're here to help you and teach you
So
how
I'm gonna-
to at
I'm
least
gonna
do
stumble-
vulnerability
I'm gonna
management
stumble
and
over you.
patching management.
So no,
Okay.
no, guys, no. So this goes back to exactly what I was saying before, right? It doesn't matter. It matters. It doesn't matter if we have all of these small businesses who need to get one-on-one time with DHS. If DHS only has 10 people working on private partnerships, right?
But does it have to be DHS? Does it have to be CISA? Can we do a private-public partnership where we have support from the government? Forget DHS and CISA.
Okay.
Government to a nonprofit, and there's a circle of help that we can
There's
give.
a circle of trust.
Building capability in SBA, for
Correct.
instance.
That's-
right?
that's
Which
actually a
has
great idea.
relationships with some of these businesses already. So I think
We just
it
took
doesn't
that
have
idea.
to be
Yeah.
CISA.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've tried some of that. The problem is you have to change the acquisition approach.
Yeah, correct.
You can't just throw money at the problem and throw organizations at it. You have to have a strategy that makes sense. I have a small business network of people that we help through all the DoD regulations. We have a SOC, we have a SIEM, and all that. And I can tell you what I said earlier. They could care less about all of it. They want to do it. They're patriots, but they don't want to become experts. Right? They don't want to become you, right? They just want to continue running their businesses.
Yeah.
And you can't train them to that. I can show you pictures of a program. I'm not going to name the agency that did it. It was a room like this, and there were binders that they paid $30 million a year for. All of them were left behind.
Hell no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
No.
I think to follow up with that, right? Everything is not packaged the same for every person. So if you're
Yeah.
talking about small businesses, they don't, excuse my language, they don't care. They don't care. So you need
That
to
was your
figure out-
language.
Yeah, I was gonna say it. I was gonna say it, and then I just felt everybody's eyes. They were like, "Is she gonna say curse words?" I was like, "No, I'm a professional. I have a jacket on." I'm
Do you
saying,
have the beat?
yeah,
There you go.
okay. They don't give a shit.
Okay.
Yeah, I
There you
said
go.
it. I say cuss words most of the time. I said it good, right? Yeah. So it's
We did tell you guys that this was going to be the
an
most
interesting
entertaining panel. Okay.
It's more about figuring out what you're trying to sell. So if you want those people, if we're trying to get public partnerships solidified, who's the salesperson for it?
That's right.
If I'm on the government side, why do I give a shit about building this relationship? My relationship is more about making money.
Well, let me give you this number. Let me give you this number then.
Yeah.
Most of the
That's what
critical
you were saying
infrastructure,
earlier. Sorry.
most of the critical infrastructure in the United States, 80% or more of that infrastructure is owned by the private entities. Okay? So the government needs to be able to have a partnership to say, if my critical infrastructure is all private, how can I help them be more secure for our national security?
I got it. The government needs a channel manager. That's what they need, a channel manager.
Yeah.
Got it.
I'm telling you.
Hey, but
Yeah.
don't try to make, to your point, if I'm a manufacturer and I do biomedical, I make furniture, I make weapon systems, I do software, why are you going to treat me all the same?
That correct?
If you're going to try to teach me the cybers, and by the way, also don't hand me that 110 NIST rules with $1 billion worth of investment in it that you want me to do in a year and expect me to do that. First, I have to become I have to read all 110.
There's a separate panel for 800, 171.
But what I'm saying is, but that's what's going on. in the industry with the DIB right now, and it's not
Yeah.
really working
Yeah.
very well. After how many $1 billion?
I think maybe we
I like
could
that he
come
keeps
around-
creating that word, kabillion. I like it.
That's the word for today.
Kabillion.
No, but I do think there are some fundamental things that maybe we can agree are cross-cutting around some of the threats out there, and we take it and we try to kind of synthesize it down to 4. So if you're updating your software, if you're training your workforce against phishing, if you are kind of using more secure file storage and transfer, right, and if you're taking a secure approach to authentication, then that in fact will protect your organization against a number of threats. But I do want to kind of come back to there was a panel earlier where one of the gentleman from CISA was talking about how they're looking at kind of these cross-cutting performance metrics and indicators that I think will be helpful. I mean, government is not going to be able to do all of this, right? I think the other side of the partnership really has to be the private sector organizing in a way that becomes like a willing partner, a helpful partner for government as well.
So I'm going to ask you all this question, okay? Because I can see you going. How do we break down the barriers in communication, trust, and that information sharing?
Number one, the people in government need to have better people, more people, all the people who can actually reach out and touch people. It does not matter how many, 81 million or something like that companies that we were talking about, a kabillion companies that we were talking about through most of this morning. It doesn't matter that there's that many companies if there aren't enough people in the government to deal with them, right? So that's number one. The second one I talked about already too is the lowering the barrier to entry when it comes to intelligence. If it's open source, it's open source. We should not be worried about this anymore. It shouldn't even be a conversation.
Okay.
I believe there should probably be an initiative across both to figure out what would, there we go. Can you hear me now? I think there should be initiatives like what I was saying, a leadership across both to first just do the exercise of why it's beneficial. What is it that I'm going to get? I'm not trying that it's not going to be a position where it's mutually beneficial. No one's above each other. What does that look like? I think we keep trying to build something with this end state in mind, and we haven't done the first steps first of why am I even doing this? Why does
what's in it for me and my bottom line?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot in it, but I think it's doing that work and then just building small partnerships. There needs to be an easy win. Like my biggest thing is like there needs to be a quick goalpost right here. The employment rate is the lack of cyber professionals. The fact that there's no one to fill those seats.
I am going to completely disagree with you on that one.
Oh, there are more than enough people to fill the seats.
All right,
There's
fill the
no
seats. There I go.
Here we go.
He's going to go next because we're going to go at it.
Tell me. The statement was there's not enough people to fill the gaps. I think there are people that are willing to fill the gaps.
I do too, as a Black girl in cyber, a nonprofit looking for young Black girls to join this organization.
And nonprofit for Hispanic and Latinos joining the field of cyber.
I'm just going to be on the board of Women's Society of Cyber Jutsu for women too. Like, what you got?
Okay, so there are people ready to go.
Why can't they work?
We need to stop looking for unicorns.
There we go.
Okay, it is except for one. Except for one.
You want to be unique, though. We don't. No. You're the one and only.
We have a problem that we are looking for a lot of people that have specialty in cybersecurity. If you look at the 500,000-600,000 vacancies that we have in cybersecurity, we have jobs that are almost unattainable. I was just about 3 weeks ago trying to fill a position for a client, and they wanted somebody with 10 years experience in a tool that has been out in the market for 5 years. Yes. Okay? And that happens, and we look at ourselves as a community and say, there's 500,000 openings. Well, let's look at these openings, and then let's look at our pathway. I know from my foundation, I got about 1,000 people looking for jobs. And what's the problem? They have the certification, they have the education, they might not have the experience there. Well, guess what? That's the gap right now for.
But they're hungry.
And they're hungry.
And
they
it's
want-
on both sides. So that's where I mean, you start somewhere that's mutually beneficial to both people. And that's the biggest gap that we're dealing with. If they go to DHS, there's nobody sitting there. So I've got 50 small businesses like this guy ready to call and figure out, am I going to be smished? I've got a kambillion.
And talk to the
other
two
groups.
people
I've
that
talked
work
to
there.
2 people. That's not,
Right.
we're trying to, so we're that you have to figure out if that's the biggest, easiest thing that's not gonna, we don't have to share data. We don't have to do anything. Let's just get butts and seats and then move from there. Then there's people to talk to.
I sat on an all-day Air Force thing on this particular topic. You know what the magic answer was? Call CISA. And I could almost jump through the screen virtually, like in the Matrix, and do pre-crime and everything. I'm like, stop telling people that. Cyber Command doesn't want you to call them because that's not their job. That's not NSA's job. You can't. Your magical unicorn answer is not call CISA. Because then the flip side of that, out of the audience, I started seeing in the chat like, no answer, no ringy dingy. No
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I emailed them like for 10 days in a row. I heard nothing.
They don't have the staff to respond.
They don't have.
Oh, we'll do your red teaming. We'll do your vulnerability scans. Oh, really? Like how many people you have for doing that? The defense industrial base alone is 300, 400,000. Most of them don't even know what you're talking about. What you want to do that?
Yeah.
I have her number.
Call Bryson. He's got the unicorns flying around.
So this is also where it becomes very important when we talk about what a private and public partnership looks like, that we talk about it at a level where people can actually help each other. Yeah. So right now you have, CISA trying to wrap their arms around this massive issue, but they don't have the right people. They don't have enough people. They're just getting started. It's going to be a while. So they're going to have to rely on industry a little bit more. And industry is going to have to rely on industry a little bit more. And these 501, C3s and nonprofits are going to have to rely on each other a little bit more until CISA gets, their arms around all of the stuff that they're actually supposed to be doing.
Yeah. You know from seeing me in other discussions that I always say this phrase: cybersecurity is a team sport. And I think that personifies the whole private-public partnership program. We have to be a team. We have to build a team. We're not all the experts in every single area, but by putting it together.
Yeah, there are probably a lot of experts in this room, but no, I mean to pull a thread on the team sport concept a bit. I agree with that kind of that multi-stakeholder team. I think not everyone is ready to get in the game though. And I think we have to emphasize and focus on readiness as well, even as CISA works to get its arms around all of its mandate now that it's been tasked with. Nonprofits, industry, across sectors, academia, we all have to be working to get ready to be a part of that team.
All right.
Just 2 seconds. Yes. And I think we just right here today created a nonprofit on partners and private, kind of working together, right? We're going to talk about this.
You guys want to join our
Come on.
volunteers?
It'll be so much fun.
And our logo is the unicorn. So we're getting pins.
No, that's already been taken. Okay. All right. Well,
that hurt.
Well, I'm going to do this. Final thoughts for everybody on the panel here as we wrap it up. Monty, I'm going to start with you, and we're going to go this way.
So if you didn't know, we're actually having this during National Small Business Week. So give it up for the small business support. Everyone in this room they're connected to some small business. Please share your expertise, share your understanding of cyber issues as Tasha did with those small business leaders so that collectively we can raise their awareness, raise their readiness.
Tasha?
Be an ally.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And that's on both sides, and especially in these kind of conversations. It's where we need to be allies to each other on the public and private part. We need to be allies to each other when we're sitting in rooms and you hear someone that's smart and they're not getting the attention that they should get to a topic. Repeat it because people listen to you, and then be an ally for that person. Just be an ally. Black Girls in Cyber. Follow us on all social media.
And share the mic in cyber.
Share the mic in cyber. Diversity. Look at our panel.
I go back to the things that I kind of mentioned before. Number one, I think there's a level of humanity that we have to get used to in cybersecurity in general, that we are understaffed, that everybody is operating below the belt, right? Nobody has enough staff. Nobody has enough time. There's too many problems. There's too many threats. Remember that when we're dealing with each other. I think a lot of times when these partnerships are coming together, everyone's thing is the most important, right? Well, this is cybersecurity, baby. Everything is important. Everything is critical. And then the other piece to that is, the classification stuff. We've got to get past this. We cannot be letting open source information go out all the time where owners and operators don't have access to it.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank everybody, both at home and here, for attending this panel for private-public partnership. I want to thank our panelists for being here today. So big round of applause for them. I want to thank R Street for bringing us together, as well with the ICS Village. Thank you very much, Bryson, for bringing us together today. And thank you very much for attending.
I feel like I see them in the back there, R Street. They're like, this was a terrible idea. What have we done?
Thank you very much, everybody.